You've entered BOOKSTORM with Kristen Civiletto and me, Chris Storm. This is a podcast devoted to best-selling books that matter, books that make a difference. We're diving down deep with beloved authors about their stories. We're exposing hot-button topics and heartfelt themes, the issues that affect each of us in our own lives, as siblings, parents, partners, friends, as human beings. We're braving new ideas, fresh thoughts, hard lessons, and important truths. Those kinds of things that stay with us long after we turn the last page and close the book. Welcome back, fiction lovers and BOOKSTORM Podcast listeners. We are very excited because we have just back from the prestigious BoucherCon International Mystery Convention, where he was the prestigious guest of honor, William Kent Krueger. William, it's a pleasure having you. He's telling me he goes by Kent, so we're going to call him Kent for the interview. We love your writing. I want to tell our listeners a little bit about you. Kent was born in Wyoming to a family full of wanderlust. Before he graduated from high school, he lived in 11 different houses, 8 different cities, and 6 different states. It's a lot of moving. The only real constant in his life was the dream of becoming a writer. And I loved this about your bio because we believe writers are born and it can be fine-tuned but not completely taught. And you're the perfect example of that. Kent briefly attended Stanford University, and I laughed at this, before being kicked out for radical activities. Well,
right on.
Right on. Right on. After that, he logged timber, worked construction, tried his hand at freelance journalism, eventually ended up researching child development at the University of Minnesota. He's been married for nearly 50 years. Congratulations to a marvelous woman who is a retired attorney. Kent makes his home in St. Paul, a city that he dearly loves. Now, you recognize this name, listeners, because he sits on the New York Times bestseller almost constantly with one of his beloved stories, and rightfully so. I want to give you a few glimpses of some awards that he has deserved and earned. Minnesota Book Award, Loft McKnight Fiction Award, Anthony Award, Barry Award, Dillis Award, Friends of America Writers Prize. His 9 last novels were all New York Times bestsellers. Wow. Kent's book, Ordinary Grace, his standalone novel, published in 2013, received the very prestigious Edgar Award given by Mystery Writers of America. The companion novel, which Kristen and I also adore, This Tender Land, was spent 6 months on the New York Times bestseller list. And I have to quote you because you say something in your bio that just really resonated with Kristen and I. You tell the story that while you were working, you would get up very early in the morning and go to a little coffee shop in a small town to write. And you said this, although I make my living from writing now, and I don't have to get up at the crack of dawn, I still do. I spend a couple of hours every morning in a local coffee shop, hunched over my notebook while the sun rises. For me, it's still the most creative time of every day. Not only am I dreaming in those hours, I'm fulfilling a dream I've had since childhood. And that resonated with all of us who have a dream, a gift, a passion to stick with it. You're a beautiful example of sticking with it and providing something wonderful to the world. Thank you, Kent.
You're welcome. And the world is welcome.
Well, we'd love to give our listeners a little bit of the background of your story. So if you'll allow me, I'd just like to give a summary, but I will not give away any spoilers, which is very hard because in your story, as it unwinds, there's things you just didn't see coming. So I'm going to be very careful. And
okay.
I'd love if you want to add anything at the end, by all means. Well, listeners, Fox Creek is the latest in the New York Times best-selling Cork O'Connor mystery series. And Cork O'Connor is a beloved character. Many of you are familiar with him. And here we see him in a race against time to save his wife, a mysterious stranger, and also a healer from some mercenaries that are tracking them through the woods. And when the story starts out, Cork is tending the grill at a restaurant he owns. He's approached by a stranger who says that he's looking for his wife. And the stranger believes that his wife is having an affair with this healer, this Henry Malot. And Cork immediately knows something is wrong because Henry is over 100 years old, and he knows that that's not something in his character that would even be happening. We also see the story from the other side, from Henry and from the wife's standpoint. Henry Malot has already had a vision of his death, and he is peacefully preparing for what he believes is the next stage in his existence. He is walking through his beloved woods, but peace eludes him because now we have a set of mercenaries that come on the scene and are infiltrating these woods. We see how Malot guides this stranger and also Cork O'Connor's wife through these woods and towards the boundary waters in Minnesota, towards Canada. And we see these woods through the eyes of this healer. And that is an amazing part of the story. Meanwhile, back in Aurora, Cork O'Connor is feverishly trying to figure out who these hunters are. And we see him tracking the people who are tracking others. So we have this incredibly multi-layered story, and the chase is on. One of the interesting aspects of this story, and something that I loved, is that we are a little bit inside of Cork O'Connor's mind as he is wrestling with all the obstacles coming his way, not just a snowstorm, not just the danger associated, but also some of the fears and doubts that he has of can he accomplish what he needs to accomplish. We loved this story. Would you like to add anything at all?
No, you've done a pretty good job.
Okay.
Without giving away too many of the twists and turns there. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
It was very hard. Well, if we are ready to jump in, let's go ahead and brave the storm.
We can't wait. So I want to say to the listeners who have not read this book or who have not read one of William Kent Krueger's books, this is the masterful storyteller, because I lost myself in this mystery and chase at the very first few pages. I loved and related to almost every character, especially one. But I can't give the name because I don't want to reveal anything in the story. But one man had lost himself. Maybe he never knew himself. And you showed the reader that to become one with nature, to be hidden inside of nature, is maybe where we belong, where we connect with the Creator, where we find ourselves. This one character says, and I'll quote, "Humans are far too focused on doing and not enough on being." And I had to ask you, Kent, as the writer of this beautiful character and the writer of this important quote, what do you believe about the importance of the natural world and our connection to it?
Well, I think nature heals. When I talked to so many people about how they survived the pandemic over the last couple of years, it so resonated with my approach to surviving the pandemic. I got out as much as I could, even if it was simply a walk in the park, to be outside, to feel the sun on your face and the wind through your hair, and smell trees and flowers and wet earth after a rain. All of those things that are a part of our natural world. All of that makes us realize how connected we are. There is a great spirit that runs through all creation, and we're a part of that great spirit, as is everything around us. We think about having to get out there into the woods, and the boundary waters. Minnesota's boundary waters is one of the most remarkable and healing places you will ever find. I challenge anybody to go into the boundary waters and not come out transformed. But you can have very much the same experience if you just go out into a park and you sit, and rather than trying to do, you try to be. just in that moment, experiencing what is offered you by all that our Creator has given us. Yeah, so I think that our connection with nature is absolutely healing, a part of where we came from, and in the end, a part of where we go back to.
And you described it so beautifully in the novel that so for the reader, for a time being, we were in those woods. We were near those boundary waters. We were trapping and hiding footprints and figuring out where to sleep at night with your characters. And it revived something in us, I think, Kristen, didn't it? Like, it just made you realize, I don't know what it is, like if you're having a bad day or you're having problems, we're so caught up in the rush of life. Like, we live our lives in concrete and buildings and traffic and man-made stuff. But we really aren't from here. We're really from nature. That's it. And thank you for taking us back there and reminding us to step away from this fast world and go where we belong now and then.
Well, I'm glad you do. I'm glad that was how you responded to it. But you know what else? I think when you go into a book and lose yourself in a book, you can have very much the same experience. And, that's one of the things that I try to accomplish in my work, is to take a reader to a place and sink that reader so sensually into experiencing that place through the words that I choose or the images that I offer, that when they have finished the book, that they have the sense that they've actually been there. They actually smelled and tasted, and all of those senses have come into play for them. So I'm glad you responded that way.
Yeah, and you did just that. And as I said earlier, that's really a gift and it's a talent and it's a passion. I don't think it can be taught. I think you're born with it. I think it can be fine-tuned, but like any art form, I think it's a gift that you are born with. And thank you for sharing that with us, Kent.
You're so welcome.
I'd like to just pick up on something you had said before I ask a question. I really got that magnificence of the natural world from reading this book, but I also was impressed by the peril associated with it. When you talk about the Northwoods, this is no joke. This is something that there's life-threatening things right around every corner and every bend. And I thought that was another element of the magnificence, but also the mystery and the excitement. So I just want to kind of comment on that a little bit.
Well, I've always thought the Great Northwoods was rife with all kinds of suspenseful possibilities. And you're right, it's a country that can kill you if you're not careful. You have to be very careful where you go, how you go, and you have to know where you are. So yeah, I love setting my work there because it's so easy to create suspense.
Oh, absolutely. Well, I wanted to pick up on another theme that we really noticed throughout your book, and that is you reference an Ojibwe word, and I'm probably going to mispronounce this, so please correct me. Agachidea?
Ogijida.
Agijida.
Ogijida.
Okay. And this refers to a person who stands between evil and his or her people. What an amazing and beautiful concept. I didn't even realize there was a word that encapsulated such an important role. And do you think that a person who is called to this position feels an extra burden throughout their life? And I was wondering if you felt like it was something that really resonates and weighs on them, because there is an important role attached here between your people and evil. My goodness. And I was just wondering if you could comment on that.
Sure. Ogijida is an Ojibwe word, and it can mean two things. It's most often used to denote warrior. But my friends in the Ojibwe community once told me it also means this: one who stands between evil and his people. And I just loved that explanation of the word. And so in my novel, Cork O'Connor is Ogijida, but it has been a difficult thing for him to accept that. Henry Malou, the wise, very ancient Mide healer, has told Cork on a number of occasions that Cork was born Ogijida. But across the course of his life, he has battled against that, because being Ogijida often requires him to do things that wound his spirit and requires healing. But across the course of the last 2 or 3 novels, he has embraced that I am a Ogijida. I cannot get around it. This was what I was born to be, and he has come to accept the weight, the responsibility that this places on his shoulders. Doesn't mean it's easy, but as you point out, yeah, those people who are Ogijida, when they are Ogijida, do feel, I think, a great weight of responsibility. But I have to tell you, I think so many of us at various times in our life play that role of stepping between evil and the people we love. Think about parents. What parent doesn't stand between evil and his or her children, you know? Or there are those in law enforcement or in the military service who, during a particular period of time, become Ogijida. And it's something that has the potential for wounding you deeply. And that's why I think that there are healers in the world as well. There are people who can guide us back to a wholeness, which is the role that Henry Malou plays so often in the stories.
Yeah, that's beautifully put. I was wondering if your character, Cork O'Connor, was ready for this responsibility. But as you were speaking, I was thinking about, are we ever ready for that level of responsibility? And I'm not sure we are, but we grow through those experiences and take them on anyway.
Yeah, I think often it's a case where we push against it because we know how difficult it and challenging and threatening we can be. But once you step into that role, um, we have heroes. There are heroes in this world. That's one of the things that I absolutely believe. There are people out there whose courageous words and courageous actions show us the way, and they are Ogijida.
Beautiful.
I love that. I love that term as well. And I also love the character Henry Malou. For our listeners, he is the 100-year-old indigenous man who was very highly respected in his community. And dreams and visions play a significant role in your story, as they do in the lives of many indigenous people. Henry, the wise man, says, "It is a great web the Creator spins, and within it, we are all connected. Dreams are sometimes the threads of that connection." And I loved that. In the real world, we have psychologists, neurologists, theologians throughout the ages that believe that dreams are significant and do signal something deeper. I wondered if you could expand upon what your character Henry believed about dreams, and maybe even give us a glimpse if you have a strong belief about dreams and visions as well as the writer.
Yeah, I'm going to start there as a matter of fact. Absolutely. I believe in dreams. I believe that, as I said earlier, I think we are all connected by a spirit that runs through all creation, no matter how large or how small. And I think in our waking hours, our brains get in the way of understanding and feeling that connection. But when we're asleep and we open ourselves so fully to everything out there, it's very easy for me to believe that we tap into knowledge, experiences that we ourselves maybe have never had, but are aware of as a result of all of the interconnectedness. My mother was a seer. She had dreams. My daughter is a seer. She has dreams. I've met so many people who have read my work, and when I talk to them, have shared with me that they too are seers. They have dreams that portend things. And so I have no difficulty at all believing it. And of course, Henry, who is 105 years old, he's a Mide, a healer. And he heals using all of the natural elements that he has come to know and understand as a result of his 100 years in the wilderness. He understands all of the connectedness and that dreams can have a powerful effect. So Stephen, Cork's son, who also has visions in his dreams, he always urges Stephen to pay attention to dreams. The interpretations of dreams is kind of a whole nother level, but we won't even go there. The interpretation of dreams is something so many famous psychologists have already tackled, and I don't think anybody really quite understands that field.
I loved that. I also loved about Henry, he was so calm things did not upset him. He had lived such a long life, and I think he knew things will work out. We tend to panic, and we tend to worry and maybe create some of our own chaos in life. But his stability felt so good to the reader. I just wanted to sit next to him and say, tell me something. Thank you
Well,
for riveting.
Henry tends to be the favorite character of readers of my series. I love Cork. Everybody loves Cork O'Connor. I mean, he centers the series, but it's really Henry who is the favorite of most readers, and my own as well. I love writing the scenes in which Henry is going to play a part because I almost never have to rewrite those scenes. Whatever Henry says, whatever Henry does, is exactly what he should do or say. So I absolutely love what Henry offers, the grounding that he offers. And don't we all wish we had a Henry Malou in our lives?
Absolutely. Absolutely.
I want to kind of pick up on that theme. Both Cork and another character show just incredible growth over the series as well as even in the story. And they've made some bad choices in the past, in some cases some fatal ones, but there was something inside of them that was noble. And I wanted to ask you, how did these characters grow through their experiences? And I was wondering if you think that people have a dissonance when they're acting contrary to that nobility of character.
Dissonance. I think I don't know what your belief is, but I believe there is a moral compass, and most people around us every day are doing their best to follow it. And when they stray from that moral compass, I think the needle of that compass kind of pokes them in the ass and makes them feel really uncomfortable with the decisions that they're making if they run contrary to that moral compass. I mean, we all experience that. We know right from wrong, but the decisions we make are not always based on that knowledge. We're human, and we all screw up. We all make choices that we regret. And so, yeah, even Cork O'Connor, who is always trying to do the right thing. Sometimes he knows exactly what that is. Sometimes he, fumbles around trying to figure out what that is. But he's always trying to do the right thing. And maybe that's what's most important. Not that you really know what's right, but you're always trying to figure that out.
Yeah, that you're moving in that general direction. And by the way, you give vivid descriptions of things, which is one of the amazing things about your writing throughout all of your stories. And I'm going to quote you on that one with that compass needle poking you in the behind, because that was perfectly said.
It sure was.
I love that.
We can all relate. There was another quote. I wasn't going to bring it up, but you said it in the book. It says, "The arc of the moral universe is long. It bends towards justice." I thought that was profound as well.
I would love to take credit for that, but that was Martin Luther King Jr.
Oh, wow. It's a beautiful quote.
It is.
It is.
So, listeners, you're going to love this book, Fox Creek, by the beloved author, William Kent Krueger. And Kent, can you give us a little glimpse? What's on your radar? What are you working on now? Not that you need to even work on anything now, because you've been so busy and we're still enjoying everything. But what are you up to?
Well, I'm working on the final revisions to a standalone novel that will be out next year. It will be called The River We Remember. It will, like my other two standalones, Ordinary Grace and This Tender Land, it will be set in southern Minnesota rather than the northern Minnesota of the Cork O'Connor series. And like those two books, it will be set in an earlier time. Ordinary Grace was set in the summer of 1961, This Tender Land in the summer of 1932. The River We Remember takes place in the summer of 1958.
That sounds wonderful. Thank you, and keep writing. And listeners, you can connect with William Kent Krueger. You can find him on his website, williamkentkrueger.com. He has a newsletter that you can sign up for so you can get updates about what he's writing next. You can find him on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and Pinterest. Thank you, Kent, so much for your beautiful writing, for these vivid, wonderful stories, these beautiful characters that we've grown to love, and it was a pleasure having you today.
You have both just been so delightful. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. Hope to see you soon.
Okay, you take care.
Bye-bye.
Yes, what a pleasure talking to William Kent Krueger. I'm having a hard time calling him Kent because For years, I think of William Kent Krueger. I love his writing. I love his connection to the indigenous people and to nature. There was another quote that I did not bring up because we had so much to talk about. But in his book, there was a part that said, "Death is a place to which he has been walking since birth." And that hit me strong too. I thought, it is so true. We ignore it. We pretend it isn't true. We put it out of our minds. We make peace with it. We find a religious belief to deal with it and to find satisfaction and peace in it. But what does this say to us today? What does this say to us about living our lives? Death is a place to which we have been walking since birth.
Yeah, that's a profound statement. And I was thinking about the character Henry Malou in the book because he also recognized that piece of wisdom and made peace with it, I think, just knowing from what we read early on. And he had a state of peace about where he was going. So he lived his life knowing that he was at peace with where the end of the story was. And I think that's a very important thing for us all to kind of listen, because we can fear the inevitable, we can run away from the inevitable, but you can't escape the inevitable. So if that's an actual part of what we have to at some point deal with, then we've got to focus on the things we do have control over. And that is living life, experiencing, leaving a legacy, investing in people. So these profound statements really are throughout this book and actually in all of William Kent Krueger's books. And so I think that's one thing that I've always enjoyed.
Me too. And what you just said is huge. So you would talk to him about the moral compass, and maybe that's a part of it too. We're not always going to do the right thing, but if we try to do the right thing, if we listen to our moral compass, it's a very interesting truth to me that deep within us, since we're little, we know the difference between good and bad. We inherently understand the difference between right and wrong. We just do. We don't always choose the right thing. Some of us purposely don't choose the right thing. But for those of us with a moral compass who are at least trying to do the right thing, I kind of feel like that's good enough. Maybe it's good enough.
Yeah. Well, I loved what he was talking about, where you stray from that, you are going to have that little prick of consciousness. And he more vividly described it. But when you think about it, there's a lot of times where we're uncomfortable. And sometimes because there's a root of something where we're not living consistent with our values and our morals. And sometimes that discomfort is also something we try to escape, right?
Or maybe we're even not living consistent with our gifts and our talents and our passion and our purpose. Maybe we're running from what we really should be doing, chasing after something that has no meaning. And that brings it back. And I want to say, this is another thing I wished I had time to say to Kent. This word, Kichi Otaziwin, I know I'm not pronouncing this correctly, but it was an indigenous word that meant to live and express yourself kindly and fully from the heart. And I thought that sums up life right there. To live and express yourself kindly and fully from the heart. That was wisdom too.
Yeah. Well, especially when you think about, on a very deep level, understanding what is the center of our heart. And for some people, that might be their faith, the creator, or something else that they believe in. But acting consistent with that, again, goes back to that idea of having a peace about your life and the decisions that you make.
I love Todd. It just was such a pleasure meeting him. His books are so very meaningful. If you haven't read one, which I don't know how you possibly could not have because they're always on the New York Times bestseller, pick one up and check it out. And in the meantime, I just want to give a little shout out, of course, to our incredibly talented sound engineer, producer, the Mr. Mark Carey. There he is.
Hope you guys enjoyed the show, and have a good one. We'll see you next week.
If you haven't seen him yet, you're going to want to check out the YouTube version. We're super thankful to this young man who is very knowledgeable with sound engineering and music. And I mentioned it before, but our theme song is written by Mark and his band, and we just love it. So thank you, Mark. Let me tell you what we have next, because we've got a very full fall into winter. We're already booking for January, if you can believe it. Lori Lico Albanese and her book Hester. Viola Shipman, The Edge of Summer. John Searles, Her Last Affair. Shelby Van Pelt, Remarkably Bright Creatures. Pam Jenoff, Code Name Sapphire.
In the meantime, listeners, stay on the radar with Bookstorm by visiting our website at bookstormpodcast.com. You can visit us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, TikTok, and if you'd like to see us in person, or better yet, one of our amazing authors, you can view the video version of this podcast on YouTube. Just search for Bookstorm and Podcast, and we'll come right up. Until next time, one of the best ways to brave the storm is to dive down deep into life-changing fiction.